Welcome to EconWorks. We live in an era of massive platforms, global supply chains, and unprecedented market concentration. But behind every headline about a merger or a legal settlement, there is a deeper mechanical struggle for control. On this show, we pull back the curtain on the invisible forces shaping our economy. We look past the talking points to examine where law, power, and markets actually collide, and how those collisions redefine the world we live in. Coming to you from the EconWorks desk, we're diving into a breakdown of the systems that run our modern life. This is EconWorks. Today's episode: when does sharing data become the same thing as fixing prices?
Imagine you are standing at the grocery store looking at a package of chicken.
Right, just a normal Tuesday.
Exactly. You probably assume the price on that sticker is determined by, well, the classic forces of capitalism. You think it's about farmers, supply chains, maybe a little healthy competition between brands fighting for your dollar.
Yeah, that's what we're all taught in Econ 101.
Right. But what if I told you that the price you're paying was actually being quietly inflated by a massive invisible database sitting on a server in Indiana?
It's wild. It completely shatters our traditional understanding of how monopolies and cartels operate. I mean, we're so conditioned to look for a very specific type of villainy.
Oh, for sure.
We're looking for, executives whispering on burner phones or rivals making secret handshake deals in some dim hotel lobby.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to really explore a fundamental, almost tectonic shift in how the modern economy functions. We are asking one incredibly high-stakes question. When does simply sharing corporate data cross the line into illegal price fixing?
And that is not an easy question to answer right now.
No, it's really not. So to figure this out, we are digging into a fascinating new breakdown from EconWorks. It's a source document titled agristats.pdf. And we brought this into the studio because it details a monumental legal settlement that just shifted the ground beneath both the agriculture and the tech industries.
Yeah, and the timeline of the source material is what makes it so relevant for you to understand right now.
Exactly, because today is Tuesday, May 12, 2026. And just last week, on May 7th, the Department of Justice, alongside this bipartisan coalition of 6 states, announced a massive settlement with a data analytics company called Agri Stats.
Which is huge.
Huge. And this happened a mere week before they were scheduled to go to a full-blown trial in Minnesota.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that this case is basically a watershed moment. It forces the legal system to actually confront modern information systems because, for decades, antitrust law was built to prosecute explicit collusion.
The smoke-filled rooms.
Exactly. A prosecutor needed a smoking gun, an email, a wiretap, an overt agreement to hike prices. But AgriStats allegedly managed to coordinate the whole meat industry without ever requiring a single explicit agreement between competitors.
Which is just crazy to think about.
They bypassed the secret meetings entirely, right? And they just replaced them with an incredibly granular, high-speed benchmarking database.
Okay, so let's get into the actual mechanics of how this company operated, because when we hear a phrase like data sharing, it sounds almost benevolent,
Sure, we all share data.
We share data every day.
Yeah.
But AgriStats was operating on a level of detail that most consumers just cannot even fathom.
Yeah, to understand the mechanism here, we really have to look at the exact nature of what they were pulling from their clients. Because AgriStats wasn't just looking at, public sales figures.
Right.
They were directly integrated into the accounting systems of competing meat processors. So they extracted highly proprietary, totally confidential metric.
We're talking the really sensitive stuff.
Oh, absolutely. We are talking about the exact cost to produce a single pound of meat, worker wages, profit margins, and specific output volumes. They ingested all this raw, guarded information, standardized the formatting, and then just piped it right back out to those exact same competing meat processors.
As benchmarking reports.
Exactly. Yeah. Detailed benchmarking reports.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I can hear business students right now saying, well, benchmarking is just standard corporate strategy.
Right, everyone does it.
Yeah, you want to know where you stand in the market. But there was a very specific catch to how AgriStats ran this system. right? It was this strict give-to-receive model.
Yeah, and that requirement is the linchpin of the whole operation. You couldn't just, pay a flat subscription fee to see your rival's data. The only way a meat processor was allowed to access these incredibly detailed reports about their
It
competitors.
was if they gave up their own data.
Exactly. They had to surrender their own proprietary data into the central hub.
Okay, it sounds like a poker game where everyone at the table agrees to play with their cards facing completely out.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. Like, if I'm playing that game and I know exactly what hand you are holding and you know exactly what hand I am holding, the concept of a bluff just ceases to exist.
Totally.
Why would anyone ever place an aggressive bet or, in the corporate world, start a price war?
Well, you've isolated the core theory of the government's case right there. The DOJ wasn't arguing that Agri Stats was, calling up executives and telling them what to charge.
Right. They didn't have to.
They didn't. They were arguing that the information system itself made overt coordination obsolete. If you know your rival's exact profit margin down to the penny and you know they can see yours, the inherent uncertainty that drives free market competition just evaporates.
Wow.
The shared information accomplishes the exact same goal as a backroom handshake.
And the most incredible part of the EconWorks source material is that this isn't just some abstract economic theory. The economists actually have hard proof of this mechanism in action.
Yeah, the 2019 data.
Exactly. They outline this massive natural experiment that happened back in 2019.
And, natural experiments are incredibly rare in antitrust economics. You almost never get to see a market switch rules literally overnight. But in 2019, due to the pressure of some private antitrust lawsuits, Agri Stats was actually forced to temporarily suspend its reporting programs for turkey and pork.
They essentially just unplugged the machine,
They did.
which means the blinders went back on, the meat processors suddenly couldn't see each other's cards anymore. So what happened to the actual cost of food?
Well, economists retained by the government analyzed the market in the immediate aftermath of that blackout, and the data was just staggering. Almost as soon as the data sharing stopped, the wholesale prices for pork and turkey fell.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. The processors suddenly had to compete blindly again to win contracts with grocery stores, and that competition drove prices down. It was a remarkably direct demonstration of cause and effect.
So shutting down the information pipe directly lowered the prices consumers paid at the deli counter.
Exactly.
But let me push back on this a little bit, because there is a dynamic about cartels that has always confused me. Let's go back to the poker game where everyone sees everyone's cards.
Okay.
If we are all keeping prices artificially high, doesn't that create a massive, almost irresistible incentive for one greedy company to cheat? Like, if I know you are charging a premium, I could lower my price just a tiny bit, steal all your customers, and make an absolute fortune.
You are bringing up one of the most fundamental concepts in economics. Cartels are inherently unstable precisely because of the temptation you just described.
Right. Human nature.
Exactly. Every participant in a price-fixing scheme secretly wants to undercut the others and capture more market share. The single biggest threat to a cartel isn't the police.
It's the other members.
Yes. It's cheating by its own members.
So following that logic, if I have access to my competitor's exact penny-by-penny cost structure through Agri Stats, wouldn't that actually make me more confident to undercut them? Because I know exactly how low I can drop my prices before they physically cannot afford to match my discount?
You would think so, and, in a complete vacuum, you would be right. But you are forgetting the role of the buyers in this ecosystem.
The grocery stores.
Right. In the meat processing industry, the buyers are massive corporate entities, giant grocery store chains, fast food conglomerates, and they negotiate these massive supply contracts privately.
Okay.
In a normal, healthy market, if a meat processor decides to secretly offer a discount to a massive grocery chain to steal their business, the rival processors won't know for sure why they lost the contract.
They just know they lost it.
Yeah. They might look at their dipping sales and assume, well, maybe consumer demand for pork is down this month. Or maybe our marketing is failing. It just blends into the everyday noise of the market.
I see where this is going. The Agri Stats reports eliminate the noise.
Completely. Because the data they pulled was so granular and updated so frequently, any deviation from the unspoken agreement was instantly visible.
So you couldn't hide.
No. If you tried to cheat the cartel by offering a secret discount to a grocery chain, your rivals would see your margins drop in the next Agri Stats report almost immediately.
So this wasn't just a benchmarking database. It was basically a surveillance system.
It functioned as the ultimate enforcer, because the only thing that keeps an illegal agreement intact is the credible threat of immediate punishment.
Right.
If you know that your rival will instantly spot your secret discount and retaliate with a massive, targeted price war to ruin you, well, cheating suddenly becomes financial suicide.
Wow.
The rapid data sharing stabilized the entire industry by keeping everyone just too terrified to step out of line.
That dynamic is totally fascinating. But it introduces a massive legal contradiction that we really need to address.
Okay, what's that?
Well, if pooling and sharing corporate data is illegal, why is a massive data broker like Nielsen allowed to exist? I mean, Nielsen collects petabytes of retail sales data and sells it as their core business model. How does Nielsen operate legally, while Agri Stats gets hit with a DOJ lawsuit and forced into a settlement? Where does the law actually draw the line?
It is the defining question for modern regulators right now, honestly, because information sharing isn't inherently evil. In fact, a lot of data sharing is strictly vital for a supply chain to function efficiently.
Right. It feels like the difference between a bakery sharing a recipe with a customer versus that same bakery sharing their exact profit margins and ingredient costs with a rival bakery across the street. But how does the legal system formally define that difference?
Well, the EconWorks analysis points to 4 very specific distinctions between a legal data broker like Nielsen and the alleged practices of an Agri Stats.
Okay, let's go through them.
Let's look at the actual flow of the information first. Nielsen primarily moves data vertically.
Meaning up and down?
Yes. It takes sales data from retailers at the bottom and moves it up the chain to manufacturers. That flow helps companies understand consumer demand and produce goods more efficiently.
Okay, that makes sense.
But Agri Stats, conversely, moved data horizontally. It took data from one competitor and handed it directly to a rival competitor. That doesn't improve supply chain efficiency. It only serves to eliminate the competitive uncertainty between rivals.
Okay, so vertical flow versus horizontal flow, that's distinction 1. What about who actually gets to see this information? Because if Nielsen is selling data to anyone who will buy it, let me guess, Agri Stats was keeping their reports exclusive.
Nailed it. That asymmetry is the second major distinction. Nielsen sells its market data broadly. Manufacturers can buy it, retailers can buy it, even independent researchers can buy it.
It's public, essentially.
Right. But Agri Stats operated as a heavily guarded, closed club. The buyers, meaning the grocery chains who were sitting across the negotiating table from these meat processors, they were strictly forbidden from seeing the benchmarking reports. Yeah, only the sellers had the complete picture of the market.
Which obviously gives the sellers a massive, unfair advantage in every single negotiation. There's also a timing element here, too, right? That's the third one.
Yep, speed and granularity form the third distinction. When you buy Nielsen data, you are generally looking at information that has reporting lags, and it's usually aggregated to show broader, high-level trends over time.
Like quarterly sales of a product category.
Exactly. But the Agri Stats system ingested raw accounting data so quickly and in such minute detail that it could actively influence near-term, like week-to-week pricing and production decisions.
Almost real time. And the final distinction is the actual content of what is being shared, I assume.
Yes. Nielsen tracks consumer behavior. They track how many boxes of a specific cereal were scanned at the register. Agri Stats tracked highly sensitive proprietary internal costs and profit margins.
Big difference.
Huge difference. Knowing what a consumer bought is helpful. Knowing your competitor's secret operating costs fundamentally alters your willingness to compete against them.
Okay, so we have firmly established that human managers using highly specific, horizontal, closed-loop data to set prices is a massive legal liability. But let's transition from human managers reading spreadsheets to the next logical step here.
The algorithms.
The algorithms automatically processing these data pools. Because if the meat industry figured out this loophole, I'm assuming tech companies did too.
Oh, we are seeing this exact pattern emerge across multiple sectors, most notably in real estate.
Right.
The most prominent parallel right now involves algorithmic pricing in the housing market. So in late 2025, there was a major preliminary settlement involving a company called RealPage, which produces property management software. And regulators are actively scrutinizing competing platforms like Yardi as well.
Right. These are the algorithms that basically suck in data from landlords across an entire city and then spit out automated rent recommendations, which directly impacts the rent you or I might pay for an apartment. But hold on. Does this mean any software that helps a business set prices is suddenly an antitrust violation? Are we going to start outlawing basic calculators and Excel formulas next?
That exact pushback is the primary defense being mounted by the tech industry. And it brings us to a really crucial legal precedent from 2024, the Rainmaker case in Las Vegas.
Okay, well, what happened there?
Several major casino hotels were sued for using this Rainmaker pricing software to set their room rates. But the court actually threw that case out.
Wait, why? If RealPage is facing massive legal pressure for algorithmic rent pricing, why did the Las Vegas hotels get a pass for doing essentially the same thing?
The distinction came down to the source of the data feeding the algorithm. The court determined that the Vegas hotels were using software that generated recommendations based on public, freely available market information.
Not private stuff.
Exactly. The hotels were not taking their confidential private occupancy rates and pooling them into a secret central hub for the algorithm to chew on.
That's the horizontal sharing again?
Right. That line, the difference between software scraping public data versus software pooling private competitor data is the absolute bleeding edge of antitrust law right now.
Which perfectly sets up the scariest frontier in this entire source document.
Yeah.
Because if algorithms pooling private data are a legal headache, what happens when artificial intelligence enters the picture?
Yeah, that's where it gets truly wild.
What happens when an AI doesn't just process data, but actually learns how to collude entirely on its own?
Well, the EconWorks breakdown maps out 3 very distinct scenarios for how AI interacts with pricing, and it illustrates just how rapidly this technology outpaces our current legal framework. So scenario 1 is just the baseline.
Okay.
Independent firms using standard pricing software fed by public data. If their prices naturally converge over time, that is simply normal market competition responding to the exact same inputs.
Right, like if the cost of jet fuel goes up for everyone, airline tickets go up for everyone. That's just math.
Precisely. But scenario 2 is where the academic research gets deeply unsettling. EconWorks cites research by Emilio Calvano and his team, who demonstrated that advanced AI agents, through a process of reinforcement learning, can learn to coordinate behavior without any human intervention.
Let's break down that mechanism. How does a piece of code learn to form a cartel?
Through relentless trial and error, you give an AI a very simple goal: maximize long-term profit. And the AI runs millions of simulated interactions, what economists call repeated games.
Okay.
So the AI might try dropping its price to steal market share, but the rival AI instantly drops its price to match, and suddenly both companies are losing money.
Because it's a race to the bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The AI eventually realizes that aggressive competition leads to lower long-term rewards. So through pure mathematical optimization, the AI learns to sustain artificially high prices, and it learns to instantly punish any rival that tries to drop their price.
Wow.
It figures out collusion from scratch without a human ever programming a single line of code that says, form a cartel.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source material brings up a scenario 3, which is AI optimized for strategic defection.
Yes.
It's like training a robot getaway driver. You train an AI to constantly scan the market for moments of chaos or high volatility and use those moments as cover to secretly undercut the cartel price, knowing the rivals won't be able to tell if it's a deliberate cheat or just random market noise.
And the implications of that are wild, because firms always have an underlying desire to steal customers.
Right, that never goes away.
Never. If you can train an AI to perfectly identify the exact moments when defection is untraceable, you create a system that is constantly cheating on the margins but maintaining the cartel structure overall.
But wait, if this scenario 3 AI is technically cutting prices to steal customers, isn't that a good thing for the consumer? How would a government regulator even begin to police that?
You've hit on the ultimate enforcement nightmare. From the outside, just looking at a spreadsheet, an AI exploiting market volatility to cheat a cartel looks observationally identical to a company engaging in fierce, pro-competitive price cutting.
Because the prices are dropping.
Right, the prices are dropping, which looks great to a regulator. But in reality, it's just a highly efficient machine managing an illegal monopoly structure. EconWorks actually notes that economists are literally running massive simulation frameworks right now, just trying to figure out how to tell the difference.
With AI evolving at this speed and the technology becoming, frankly, an impenetrable black box,
Yep.
how are the courts possibly keeping up? Why are we suddenly seeing this explosion of lawsuits and settlements right now in the mid-2020s?
Well, the current landscape is the result of 3 powerful forces colliding all at once.
Yeah.
First, the infrastructure has finally matured. I mean, the economic temptation to fix prices is as old as commerce itself, but the digital architecture required to stream real-time accounting data and process it algorithmically, that didn't truly exist at scale until recently.
That makes sense.
Second, we saw a massive shift in the legal environment. For decades, the Department of Justice and the FTC maintained specific safe harbor guidelines that protected certain types of competitor information exchanges.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But in late 2024, the government abruptly withdrew those safe harbors. They signaled a remarkably aggressive new stance that really threw the corporate world into uncertainty.
Wow. And the third force driving this?
Macroeconomic politics. The severe inflation of the early 2020s turned the cost of everyday living into a massive bipartisan political issue.
Oh, absolutely.
The rising cost of a grocery bill or a monthly rent check became the most salient issue for voters. It's actually telling that the investigation into Agri Stats began under one presidential administration and the settlement was finalized under another.
Interesting.
That rare bipartisan continuity gave regulators the political armor they needed to test these highly aggressive, novel legal theories in court.
So what does this all mean for the legal system going forward?
Yeah.
Let's bring this back to the Agri Stats settlement from last week. If the government had this company dead to rights, with that 2019 natural experiment showing that prices fell when the data stopped, why settle just 7 days before trial?
It's a great question.
Why not put this in front of a judge, secure a massive guilty verdict, and set a concrete legal precedent that outlaws this behavior for all the AI companies watching?
Because it comes down to the archaic phrasing of the law they are trying to enforce. The primary tool regulators have is Section 1 of the Sherman Act, which was written in 1890. And crucially, Section 1 explicitly requires proof of an agreement to restrain trade. Agri-Stats was actually the lowest hanging fruit for the government because there were human intermediaries, measurable beta contracts, and that 2019 natural experiment. But if the DOJ took this to trial and lost on a technicality, if a conservative judge looked at it and said, well, there is no literal handshake or written contract here, therefore there is no agreement under the 1890 definition of the Sherman Act, that loss would be catastrophic.
Because if they can't prove an agreement when human beings are sending each other spreadsheets, they will never be able to prove an agreement when two black box algorithms independently learn to fix prices in the cloud.
Precisely. A loss in the Agri-Stats case would have completely torpedoed their much more difficult cases against algorithmic platforms like RealPage, so the DOJ strategically settled.
I see.
They forced Agri-Stats to overhaul its operations and submit to ongoing oversight, but they intentionally left the deeper legal question of what constitutes an agreement in the digital age completely unresolved. They chose a tactical victory over risking a strategic disaster.
Wow. You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I really want to connect all of this high-level economic theory directly back to you listening right now.
Yeah, it affects everyone.
It really does. Because this is not just an academic debate happening in some courtroom in Minnesota. Every single time you put a package of chicken in your grocery cart, every time you sign a lease renewal for your apartment, every time you click book on a hotel website, there are invisible high-speed webs of data actively influencing the exact number you are being asked to pay.
Absolutely.
The era of the cinematic, smoke-filled room is truly over. The era of the data-filled server has arrived, and it is quietly, efficiently shaping your daily cost of living.
And that reality leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought for you to mull over. We've spent this entire time looking at how the law is struggling and frankly failing to keep up with the technology.
Yeah.
If AI can mathematically teach itself to collude without a single human instruction, and if auditing these black box algorithms to find a legally binding agreement is practically impossible, then maybe trying to police the software is just a fool's errand.
So what's the alternative? Do we just accept that algorithms run the market?
Well, if a law written in 1890 simply cannot comprehend artificial intelligence, perhaps the only effective solution left is what economists call pure structural remedies.
What does that mean?
A structural remedy means you don't try to change the behavior of the companies, you change the physical structure of the market itself by breaking up massive monopolies.
Oh, wow. just break them up.
Exactly. If regulators stop chasing the code and instead forcefully break up these highly concentrated industries, there simply won't be enough dominant players left in the market to successfully coordinate prices, regardless of how smart their AI is.
That makes total sense.
Right. If we can't diagnose the disease because the symptoms are invisible, maybe our only option is to fundamentally alter the environment so the disease can never take root in the first place.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at Econ Works, thanks for listening.